it is now time to be joined by local broadcaster, national broadcaster, good friend, former co-host of mine who has chosen to be a co-host with another man. And it's okay. It's okay. I've dealt with it in the only way I can, just in a very petty manner. But I'm dealing with it. I want to welcome on to the program a man by the name of Cam Stuart.
And Cam, co-host is a bit of a stretch on the Pete Souza show, but it's flattering to me.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly leaned on you and really enjoyed our time together at ESPN Central Texas. And so when I suddenly had an opening, I thought you would just dive at it and just be tearing down the walls to rejoin me. I don't think that's actually what happened. And so I have ended up with a Hoosier Hall, Kevin Hoosier Hall.
You're welcome.
There he is. Welcome. There he is. He's got longer hair than you. And he happens to be associated with his alma mater as a national champion. Ours was won in 2021. That now feels a long, long time ago. Have you noticed how positive though I'm trying to be? Like, instead of just being this is awful. I mean, I think it's pretty easy for you and I to talk about how bad Baylor men's basketball is right now. It's not as easy to just try to point people toward, listen, this has been a decade or really even 15 to 20 years of greatness. Okay. Mm-hmm. Can we put up with one just total stink bomb? And I know some people thought last year was a stink bomb.
Yeah.
If you did, let me present this year's evidence. But you know what, Cam, the thing I like about you and the thing I like about myself, if I might say that, is that at 5:30 today, at 5:30 Central Time, you operate in where are you these days?
I'm in Boston again.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
So you're at Eastern. So it'll be 6:30 for you. You've been in Chicago.
Yeah.
You spent some time in Charlotte. You used to be in Waco, so it's a little bit hard to keep up. That is great to have you back in the hub city. That's where you belong. That's where you function the best. But even with your huge social calendar, and tonight's probably like trivia night for you and Grace.
Oh, we did a cooking class last night. So today has been. You would love it, Matt. I mean, making fresh pasta at a glorified deli down the street. So
that's nice.
We had a great time. It was great.
Yeah, that's what people do that are young and in love, and the honeymoon phase has not ended. 30 years in, you're just happy to if something arrive on the table. But I'll tell you what's great about this marriage that I'm in for many, many years, 28 going on 28 years, is just you want somebody that when you're snowed in and you literally can't go anywhere for 3 days, you need somebody that you love being around. Because if you didn't, that would be awful, right? You can't escape. And I will say our little walks out in the snow and hanging with a dog, I have a great situation. It just reminds me that I made a really good decision. I don't know if she would agree with that. That she made a good decision. Okay. This news,
bad decisions.
Yeah. This news that broke, Bill Belichick, what was your level? Did you have the immediate, and by the way, Kevin has loved this photograph, this little video of can you see that?
Yeah. I saw it. Yeah. That was kind of my reaction.
Of Bill reacting. Did it your first reaction, shock, and then your second reaction probably this checks out. This checks out for people's contempt of this guy. What was your level of surprise?
Yeah.
And was it one of anger, or was it one of of course they're going to do this to Belichick?
I was going to say there was some anger in between, anger sandwich there, anger in the middle, and then what are you going to do? And as soon as the name Bill Polian came up, I said, well, okay, Yeah, this is starting to check out now. It's crazy, Matt. Like, we can do the ESPN stuff all day with Cam Newton ranting and raving about how this Patriots team is lucky and they haven't played anybody. And it's just like, okay, whatever. But if we're talking about the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we're not talking about a talking heads show. We're not doing that. We're not talking about a clip on TikTok or Twitter. We're talking about the Hall of Fame. It's supposed to mean something. And to not include Bill Belichick, even on the first ballot, is to me just certifiably insane. It's asinine. It doesn't make much sense, to the point where I was doing my show earlier and I was debating not talking about it. Obviously, we have to talk about it, but it's one of those things that's so basic that it unified pretty much everybody in the sports world of like, what are we doing here? Like, what more explanation do we need to have? It's like keeping Michael Jordan off the first ballot because he played baseball. Like, it's silly. It doesn't make any sense.
Now, the fans, and we happen to have a Colts fan and an Indianapolis guy right here on this program. But and it's not just the fans. The people in that room, we just had a voter on, and he couldn't really, get into exactly what was being said. But, like, he did speak to the fact that when you present somebody, you talk about the pros. And generally, I think when you present them, you just talk about the pros. You don't, try to present the argument and then present your counter argument. But it came up in that room, obviously, about the Spygate. And even Deflategate, I'm sure, came up. And it's bad optics. I think there is an argument to be made that they have a horrible process, a voting process. I think that's fine. And there may be some truth to that. But the fact that you have Dungy and Polian and these like huge sort of anti-patriots characters over time in that room, in that voting is tough. Now you go, well, Matt, that's just 2 votes. Well, but let's not act like they don't have influence. I used to have this Bill Polian joke series, and it was mainly it wasn't even based on the Lamar Jackson stuff. He had an air about him when he was on ESPN, and I thought he came across as extremely sort of self-important. And so I used to, as I tended to do, I had a whole Polian joke series where I would kind of go after him on Dallas radio and all this kind of stuff. Well, now I think I've got more ammunition than ever, but he's a very old man now, to the point I don't like beating up on him. First of all, I know one of his sons now, but that was kind of sad yesterday for him to go, because it looks like he's lying. He either has really bad memory loss, because I do think, he's older, so that could be the case. But the quote was, "I'm 95% sure that I voted for Belichick." So again, it's a bad look. And terrible. The truth is, a better look would be just owning it and going, heck yes, I voted against him. You had Spygate, you had Deflategate, and you had all of that. But it just, to me, it's all an extremely bad look. And then you heard the breaking news also, Eli Manning. Like, Eli Manning being kept out for a few years is way more defensible than keeping out Bill Belichick.
I agree 100%. 100%. And like, with the Polian not remembering part of this, it's like, man, if you can't remember that, and maybe it is a memory loss thing, I don't think we can have you voting at that point. I don't think we can have you in the room with the voters making these cases if you can't remember who you voted for. Like, this whole process is about remembering stuff. You're supposed to remember these guys' careers and what they did. I think that becomes really questionable. And I'd go as far as saying the 11 or more guys who did not vote for Belichick, they should probably have their votes looked at here and whether they should be a part of the process in the future. And I know Jimmy Johnson, the great Cowboys coach, would agree with me with his tirades on Twitter today. But to your point about Polian and, his polarizing nature, so to speak, it's funny to say that comparing it to Bill Belichick, who's very polarizing. But you just can't help but look at their history together, right? Like, I wish Bill Polian was my agent because, boy, can he convince some people. He somehow got the greatest coach in the history of the sport not get in the Hall of Fame the first year. And he got the rules changed after the Patriots beat their butts every year. He got the rules changed. So Bill Polian, man, he has got some unbelievable persuasive skills about him. But you look back at that history.
Yeah, you're right. But we should add at least 11 people. And he may have been influenced them. Dungy may have. It may be completely unfair to Dungy. Maybe Dungy voted for Belichick. I don't know. But because Dungy's really good friends with Rodney Harrison and some of those Patriots. So maybe it's unfair to do that. But right now, it looks really bad. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, looking back at that history, with he and Dungy going against Belichick all the time, and they couldn't beat him. They did it one time, paled in comparison to the other times that they could not. This felt like, 20, 30 years of these people not being able to get one over on Belichick, whether it be the coaches in the room or the executives in the room or the reporters in the room. Who got treated like garbage by Belichick for a long time, right? Including Ron Borges. And this is, I think, their way of getting one over on him. And that's just, to me, is not what a Hall of Fame is. And by the way, we do get the same thing in baseball. We do, which gets really scrutinized, the Baseball Hall of Fame. But they couldn't find a way to beat this guy for 20, 25 years, and now they found a way to beat him for a couple of months.
If Borges had a rough relationship with Belichick, it's part of me thinks it's almost good that he presented because but then people would say the conspiracy would be that he maybe said a bunch of nice things, but also voted against him as he's presenting or whatever. Like they probably, like, at some point, if one of the presenters, for instance, Calvin Watkins is presenting Darren Woodson. I covered Darren Woodson. Calvin was not on the beat yet when Darren Woodson was still playing, and we were covering Bill Parcells and Darren Woodson. So in some sense, it's okay because he's coming in and he's not really that emotionally attached. I'm not saying he hasn't gotten to know Darren Woodson over the years, but he really doesn't have the relationship that a lot of us have with Darren. We were there. I watched the tail end of his career. Borges was there for all of it. And as you guys know there, because the relationship with the Herald and the Globe, and all those stories, and there's a bunch of bad blood between this guy and that guy and all. But like, it's almost like this judge in this Alabama basketball player case. At some point, if there's enough vitriol or enough like bad blood or history between like Borges and the coach, he should just recuse himself from being the presenter. Or even if it's really a high level type deal, you should recuse yourself from even voting on a certain person.
Be honorable.
But again,
that would be honorable.
And at some point, by the way, these guys that like Borges, I don't. Does he write for anybody anymore? Like,
I don't know if he does.
Very, very much removed from being a media person in that area. And so for 20 years, 15 to 20 years, sort of after his time as a writer, to still be voting is kind of crazy. I mean, it's kind of like, I think you kind of, at some point, you got to update it. Now,
what I wonder, by the way, real quick, what I wonder about with the Borges thing is I wonder how much he even prepared for this presentation.
Thinking
right?
he would for sure get in.
I mean, you just put the resume up. It's kind of like to go back to harken back to your law days. It's kind of like the res ipsa loquitur of this. It's just it all speaks for itself, man. Like, what do you do? Greatest head coach of all time, and you could argue one of the 2 or 3 greatest defensive coordinators of all time. To keep a guy like that out on the first ballot is, again, it's crazy.
I used to have this professor. I think it was Professor Featherston in law school. And he would like finish these statements and go, he would always say, King's X. And I remember thinking like, wait, what does that mean? What's that? What is that in this context? Why does he keep saying that? But it was kind of like what you were just saying. I think that was his way of like kind of it was encapsulating, King's X. I do remember sitting out there and going like, now wait, I don't understand exactly what he means by that here in this context. Ooh, those are rough memories. As those law school memories come flooding back. I tell you what, I want to bring on Kevin Hoosier Hall because he represents, Cam, someone who the Deflategate, and we realize, I think logically in our minds, he won 6 Super Bowls. And I want to hear Kevin's take on Deflategate, and then Cam,
the Deflategate theory, if we could. There's nothing real about it. So
Well, but it was happen.
Cold outside. That was real. Yeah.
Also, nothing not real about
it. I want to. Okay, I've already kind of dismissed Deflategate. I actually meant to say Spygate if I said Deflategate. Okay. Spygate was an actual thing, and they were caught in it, and they were punished. And Bill was fined $500,000, and I think the organization may have been fired $250,000. I think in
Dr. Draft pick,
and they were dropped a first-round draft pick. Mm-hmm. Now, some would say it was not enough. Some would say, well, look, they shut down that, and then they immediately went back to winning. But Kev, and knowing you're a Colts fan, but I do think you represent a lot of people out there that were, as you put it earlier, pleasantly surprised by this outcome. Why do you agree that Bill Belichick should have to wait to get in if he gets in at all?
Well, we talk about respect for the Hall of Fame, right? And this enshrinement that means so much to so many people. Only 29 coaches have ever been enshrined in the Hall of Fame. To say that you are allowing a proclaimed a known cheater to participate and be enshrined in that is a disgrace to the Hall of Fame. No matter how many wins you may have, those are all tainted by the fact that you are a cheater. Ask most people who have a moral compass, and they will say, yeah, that shouldn't be allowed. And so do I apologize on Polian or Dungy or the Colts organization? Or say being the forerunner for getting Dan Snyder dismissed for actually having a backbone in this. No, I've said for a long time that working for the Patriots, being in the Patriots organization is like working for the mob. Do you want to have Al Capone as a Hall of Fame member? Probably not.
It'd be kind of like having O.J. Simpson in the Hall of Fame. Oh, wait,
Agreed.
They do have that. They do have that.
O.J.
Simpson's bust is in the Hall of Fame. They also, Bill Cowher is one of those coaches in the Hall of Fame. And if I could present, I've got a video in here from Bill Cowher at Radio Row talking at the Super Bowl. This was 8 or 10 years ago about Spygate. This is coming from a Hall of Fame coach.
I would just say to you in regards to Spygate, they were doing nothing different than anybody else was doing. We don't have to worry about it in today's game because today's game, we had the microphone. You could talk to the people on the field. Back then, you had the signal. We had wristbands. Okay, so the wristbands we would use, and Coach LeBeau was old school, and Coach LeBeau said, okay, I will do the wristbands. He did it for like one series. And then all of a sudden, he got back and hey, guess what that is? It doesn't take long. That's man-free. Okay, that's single high.
So his signals on the sideline is what you're talking
about? Yes. I mean, we're trying to pick them up as well. I mean, they did a better job of picking up our signals than we did pick up.
So why can Bill Cowher do it and get in the Hall of Fame?
Listen, There is a difference from being active on the field and doing it live and in person and recording someone's practices.
Well, no. Whoa, now this is perfect because that never happened. That never happened. That was a made-up story. John Tomasi got duped. He put it in the paper at the Boston Herald, Ron Borges' paper, days before Super Bowl 42. He got completely duped. There was never a practice filmed. There was never a walkthrough filmed, ever. That is completely made up.
But it's interesting, Cam, because Kevin's not alone in attaching that story, which Tomasi's lucky to even have a career. Yeah. I mean, it was one of the most crazy getting a story wrong ever because it like blew up Super Bowl week. I was there and it turned out to be wrong. And I know Tomasi and he recovered from it somehow. It was like covering the Red Sox or somebody, after that. So Cam's right on that. We don't want to dunk on you too hard on that, but that one was proven to be wrong. I totally get where you're coming from because a lot of fans, where there's smoke, there's fire. So every allegation, when you get caught doing something like Spygate, sort of gets attached. And like, hey, you remember that? You remember that? Well, that was wrong. But now, Cam,
because now you're talking about the character of an individual. And once that disintegrates, what's left, honestly?
I mean, there's some bad hombres in the Hall of Fame, man.
Yeah, we got it's full of bad characters.
So, Cam, would you consider Tom Brady to be the greatest quarterback of all time?
Yes.
Okay, so this is Belichick's record without the greatest quarterback of all time, 83-104. He has less than a 50% win rate without the quarterback. So, a la C.J. Stroud being a Nico Collins merchant, as in recent days, or Shea Gilgeous-Alexander being a free throw merchant, isn't Belichick just a Tom Brady merchant then? All of his Super Bowls riding on the coattails of him.
Yeah, and all Bill Walsh's Super Bowls came with Joe Montana. All Chuck Noll's Super Bowls came with Terry Bradshaw. It's the only coach that we do it to, and I'm not really sure why, but it is the only coach we do it to. Every great coach has had a great quarterback with them at some point or another, some longer than others. Obviously, Belichick and Brady did it for a long time. I don't know why we punish him for that. And, hey, I mean, he's won a playoff game with the Cleveland freaking Browns, man. I mean, that should be enough to put him in the Hall of Fame right there. They've only had one since then.
So, just to be clear, you're Tom Brady and Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana all the same level then?
I mean, Brady's better than them, but like, is he leagues higher than Joe Montana? Probably. Joe Montana won 4 Super Bowls. He's better. Yeah, but that's like, Michael Jordan and Larry Bird. They're both pretty damn great. You know what I mean?
Yes. Now that I think about it, like Brian Billick, under Kevin's definition, winning one with Dilfer, we probably ought to get him in the Hall of Fame, Cam. Get Brian Billick in the Hall of Fame. He did it with an inferior quarterback. The Chicago Bears played the Colts in the 2006 season in the Super Bowl, and Lovey got them there with Rex Grossman. So let's get Lovey in too. I had the same, and Kev, you can tell. It's funny, Cam and I did not compare notes. That's exactly what Cam just said. Is exactly what I texted you back. What about Landry with Roger? What about Chuck Noll with Terry Bradshaw? Like, you just name, great coach after great coach. The thing is, and Cam, you can speak to this. In those early days of Brady, they had to. That was kind of a fascinating time because he was basically getting to have what was supposed to be Drew Bledsoe's career, right? Bledsoe gets Wally Pipp basically, and they get Tom in there. But in those early days, while Tom was good, they had to do it with like patchwork defense. I remember they were using that one receiver to play cornerback in some of those early days. That was some of the greatness of Bill. Like, Parcells is unbelievable. I'd never take anything away from Parcells. But Bill was with him when he won 2 of those Super Bowls. He was his defensive coordinator. And now Bill had Bill had a defensive background. Bill Parcells actually was calling the offensive plays for the Cowboys when he was here. So Bill could kind of swing either way from a coaching standpoint. But I think if we're going to, go ahead.
I was going to say, to your point, talking about those early teams the early winning Patriots teams with Belichick, like this team that we're watching in 25 and 26, pretty similar to that 01 team in terms of its makeup. In fact, I would say the quarterback this year statistically is better than Brady in that year. Not as clutch yet, but very similar. And they didn't score a lot of points getting to the Super Bowl. They went into Pittsburgh and they had 2 non-offensive touchdowns and 1 offensive touchdown thrown by Drew Bledsoe. They had the Snow Bowl the week before. That was 16-13. They were down 13-3 in the fourth quarter. So, it actually is pretty similar. So while everyone, in the national media is dunking on how the Patriots offense right now can't move the ball, that's kind of how it started with that, the first leg of the dynasty, so to speak, back in 01. And not for nothing, Matt, but the quarterback coach for the Patriots that year in 2001, Bill Belichick. Their quarterback coach died in training camp, and Bill Belichick took over as the QB coach, as the head guy. Something to think about. Maybe he made Tom Brady. People are saying.
I think it was bad. It was rough for him because Tom goes to the Bucks, and of course the Bucks go win a Super Bowl. And then what's all funny too is Bob Kraft is also up for the Hall of Fame, and that's going to be ugly. What one of the voters told us earlier today was like, hey, there's going to be a cloud over this class. And if Kraft goes in and Belichick doesn't, it's going to add even more fuel to the fire.
Which, by the way, Matt, that's realistic here. Let's lay this out because everyone says, oh, Belichick will get in next year, and obviously he should. But let's just say the Patriots win. Let's say they beat the Seahawks. Then you got a recency thing, and you're talking about Robert Kraft going to a Super Bowl already with 3 different quarterbacks, 3 different head coaches, and possibly winning with a second set after rebuilding the team. I think the voters really look at that next year, Matt, and say, we've had Jerry in here for a decade for some reason when we haven't had Kraft, and he could do it again if they beat the Seahawks. And that could push Belichick to a 3rd ballot.
Ooh. From an Indy perspective, also in the Hall of Fame, Reggie Wayne is due his this year.
How many times has he been on the ballot?
This is
He's a Hall of Famer, former Patriot,
I think. The fact that Andre Johnson went before him, he has more numbers in the postseason than Andre Johnson has in a single season.
Yeah, I think Peyton made him.
Yeah, how many sacks
Reggie bridged a gap. Reggie went from quarterback Peyton and had to do it on the other side of Marvin, and then had Andrew Luck as his quarterback and had to do it on the other side as T.Y. Hilton. Dude bridged all kinds of things, and I'm telling you, he has
named 2 great quarterbacks.
Yeah,
he had I don't know if that helps your argument. And he had people on the other side that were opening things up for him. I think you're making an argument against him getting in.
What's a receiver that didn't have a quarterback that he could get him the ball?
That's a great point. Well, Calvin,
it takes
Johnson.
2 to tango.
I guess he had Stafford, but for a while. But that's a great point, Kev. That's a great point.
I like but I like hearing from Kevin. I mean, and now I'm hurt, Cam, that he thinks because we think this is ludicrous that Bill Belichick's not in, that means that you and I don't have a moral compass. But that one hurt. Okay, and I'm gonna have to live with that. And then I have to go every day.
There's a phrase. It's called "cheaters never prosper." You learn that when you're really little. If you can't apply that when you're an adult, come on. What are we doing?
I mean, is that a phrase? It's interesting to watch all this play out. And man, Cam, thank you, because we had an actual voter, and then we followed it up with someone that talks about the Patriots a lot. But it is kind of weird, isn't it, that the Patriots are back on their throne and they're going to the Super Bowl and they're going to match up against a team that they had one of those heroic, great memories against. And this hits. It just, man, Wickersham, and it's interesting to look at like who in the media, Cam, comes up with these stories. Wickersham's always there, right? With a Patriots thing. And it's interesting to me that while Brady and Belichick certainly had some rough moments there at the end and after he left, right? They've made up. And so Brady has to do the weird thing where he tries to pacify mom and dad. And he tries to kind of hang in there with Kraft, and he helped, and some of those people might have been duped, as you well know, and you and I've talked about it. I don't know if everybody who participated in that Kraft documentary knew what Robert was trying to do to Belichick, even Belichick himself.
Yeah. I don't think
Belichick sat for that thing, and obviously somebody from Kraft's camp's like, "Hey, Bill, we need you in this. It's going to be awesome." Blah blah blah, and they get Belichick on there, and they're like, "Hey, man, what about this? What about that?" He's like, "Wait, I didn't know I was sitting down for this."
Yeah, here's the episode. We open with the Jet security guard busting down Spygate like it's a Law and Order episode. Yeah, I don't think he knew that he was signing up for that. In fact, I obviously don't know Belichick, but knowing how frosty their relationship got, you had to think that he's feeling like I'm going to do Bob a favor here. I'm going to do my old boss a favor. You know, we did have some great times.
Thinking that could have even led to a healing process.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit down and do the old man a solid.
Yeah. That was a tough moment for us, that series. I made it through about 4. And then I had that episode where, you know, they were basically asking the question if Bill Belichick made a killer out of Aaron Hernandez. And I was like,
he put the order out.
I think I'll go watch some Simpsons reruns now. Yeah.
I brought up with Kevin earlier, like there's interesting characters involved in these stories. You know, Tommaso's, and I was like when Kevin wandered off into that area, I'm like, oh no, Cam's coming in off the top rope. But I brought it up with Kevin, the Kravitz angle. You know, that guy that was a former columnist for the Indy Star, then became like a writer for a news station or something like that in Indianapolis, and he was involved in Deflategate. And then that was an interesting one because even my little kid at the time, like little kids loved that story because they were studying about like the science of things and something about like how much air was in a ball or letting the air out of a ball really appealed to little kids. They really enjoyed that scandal.
Oh,
but
man.
That was one where my late great buddy took a hit on that story because Chris Mortensen, what was his part of it? Did he say that 12 of the he had a real specific number
12 of the
footballs.
13. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So he had that report. He had that like kind of the metrics of it.
Yeah. But Kravitz had something.
I think Kravitz was
in that game.
I think he was the one who
initial story.
Yeah, like 1 or 2 in the morning, which game I was at, by the way. I felt those balls, trust me. Where Kravitz, I think, made the initial report of the Colts are, you know, they had this complaint. They took the balls at halftime or whatever it was. I think he had the first report on it. And then Mortensen had kind of the details and Sal Palantonio took on the rest from there. But I have to stop it at that because he's going to be on the Pete Souza show this week. So I got to.
Who, Sal Pal?
Yeah. Heck of a reporter.
He's on my show. I'm gonna have a little talk with old Pete. You know, we have our
just like the old John Morris talk.
Oh my goodness,
back in the old days.
Went over pretty well. Thank you, Cam. I appreciate it, man. That was really enjoyable time, and it brought me back to some old memories.
Good stuff. Thanks for having me, Matt. Always appreciate it.
Okay. There he goes. Cam Stewart Show. He's also can be seen on the Pete Souza Show. He's a big part of what we do at Rogue, also part of the Locked In family.